Hi. Now it is the end of September. Yes, September. I am just holding on to the end of the year because I'm so tired. Also, you can't see. My tattoo is almost done. I thought I'd be done, but then my artist said that actually he requires a bit more time because it's not as simple as it looks. So I have 2 fish down and I'm left with 1 more fish here and a little bit of like touch up near the shoulder area, and then I'll be done, and then I will have to wait a few weeks and then I'll come back for like final touch-ups, and then I guess I'll be done more or less forever. So I'm looking forward to that. I think like by now I've already gotten used to the pain. I feel like the pain is worse when you do the white. It is the absolute worst. Nothing compares to the pain for me personally. So this month, despite the busyness, I actually managed to read 11 books, but not because like they are very difficult books or what. I read an entire romance series called The Worthingtons, so maybe I'll start with that. I have 6 of the physical books here with me, but for the novellas, I read them on Libby. There are 2 novellas, 2.5, so between book 2 and 3, and book 5.5, so between books 5 and 6. The actual series itself has 6 books, so this is one thing I'll talk about, and then I have 2 more books here. Okay, so The Worthingtons, at first when I read them, I thought that they were going to be a knockoff of the Bridgerton series, like, you know, Dollar Store Bridgerton or something like that. But actually, I was wrong. Yes, there are many similar tropes, but then again, I think those are tropes common to the genre itself. So, for example, you have like a young lady who just came out into the marriage mart. She's on her first season. She's looking for a husband, and then you have like a rake who doesn't want to give up his bachelor ways, but then he falls in love with her, and then he finds himself doing all sorts of things that he never would for her, and then he declares his love for her, she declares her love for him, and then they get married with a special license because they cannot wait, right? They cannot wait. They want to immediately get down to the nuptial duty. So there's a lot of it in this series. I think like there is no point going through the individual plot of the book, so I will just go through like what I think makes it different from the Bridgerton series. So the Bridgerton series is very, how to say, even though there's a lot of sex inside, the maturity is not really there. There's a lot of back and forth about whether or not he loves me, whether or not she loves me, and the focus is more on like the emotional angst of it. But in the Worthingtons series, that is not exactly the case. For most of the part, like for the first 5 books, it talks about societal issues actually. So in the world of the Worthingtons, there is explicit reference to brothels and to the way in which women are turned into slaves for sex by paying gentlemen. So there is a very famous brothel called Miss Betsy's. Is run by a woman called, obviously, Miss Betsy, and she, as you will discover very very quickly, kidnaps women whose husbands have left the country to go to war because they are just left behind, and if they are with child, she then forces them to have an abortion by making them drink some kind of tea. After they lose the child, they are no longer pregnant, right? Then she will kidnap them and put them in a whorehouse where she gets them so addicted to opium that they are so out of it and they cannot leave, and they basically do not have a choice in the matter at all. They are basically forced to become prostitutes. It's a bit dark for a romance novel, right? That's what I thought. I was like reading it and I was like, this is not what I expected at all. I expected like something maybe a bit fluffier. There must be other ways to show that, you know, the man is good for you. But in this book, for a man to be good for you, he needs to be woke. He needs to be like progressive. So generally the men, if they start out not progressive, by the time they are done falling in love with their lady, they are progressive. They believe in women's rights. They believe that, you know, women shouldn't be forced into prostitution. They believe that like sex work is damaging. They believe in whatever the woman believes in, and they end up championing those causes as well. They started backing it with their money and with their authority. So I understand that, like, you know, the romance genre is firmly in the realm of fantasy. So that is just my personal opinion. I know it's not like fairies and hobbits or what, but It is fantastical in the sense that you are presented here with the ultimate fantasy of a man who can be changed, a man who comes in and he's just waiting for the right woman to fix him. So this series gives you just that. There is a man, and he might not be, perfect. He might be kind of irritating at the start, but then he falls in love with a woman, and because of his love for her, he is driven to do charitable things. He's moved and inspired by her passion for activism, and he joins her, and he wakes up his idea and he realizes, oh, the plight of women is hard. Women have a really hard time in society. And then the prenuptials that are agreed on end up being very generous towards the woman, in the sense that even after he dies, she has her own money. She's supposed to have her own settlement, because what if she falls into the hands of like the heir of the earldom or the marquisdom, and it's like a cousin who doesn't care about her, and she ends up basically being a poor relative, having to live off a pittance? No, right? So there's a lot of that here. The discussion of what women should have to protect them in a society that doesn't want to give them anything, that doesn't really want to allow them to own anything that is not given to them by a man. I think the sex is like nothing now, okay, but the rest of it is quite intriguing. And also, like, towards the middle, you find out that actually after Miss Betsy's brothel was closed down, she went on to become a procuress. That means that if a gentleman, not a normal man, okay, not like a blackguard or anything, he decides, I like that Chobu over there, he can pay her to kidnap her so that he can compromise her in like a random deserted inn or something, and then she will be forced to marry him because because her family would not want to suffer the disgrace of like your non-virgin daughter anymore, right? So it's very dark, and one of our heroines ends up being like the victim of that. Somebody took a liking to her, even though she is betrothed to the hero. He decides that, he really wants to force himself on her lah, make it such that she has no choice but to marry him, so that her dowry will be his and he will have like his beautiful wife that he can do whatever he wants to forever. I think it's very clear by now that the themes presented to you here are much darker and much more mature than in like the Bridgerton series. Also, like in the last book, this book, believe in me, just ignore the cover art. I think it's very embarrassing to read it in public, but you know what, I just do it. And going back to the story, this book is different because the heroine is not like looking for a husband. She wants to go to university. She's been studying all this time. She's been corresponding and receiving an education, an unconventional education, through like talking to other people, through using her contacts to get to know intellectuals, and then she's a polyglot. She speaks like 7 languages. However, she's so beautiful that everybody just wants to fall in love with her and marry her. They think that she's a good listener, but actually she's just zoning out. She's tuning out all these useless chatter from men that she doesn't care about, and then the men fall in love with her because they're like, oh, she's so beautiful and she's a wonderful listener. She just makes me feel special because she agrees with everything I say. But of course that's not what she's doing. So her mother wants her to get married. She manages to like sort of persuade her mother to let her travel with her cousin in Europe, after which she will just enroll in university in Italy. And in comes a man who is very pressurized to produce an heir because his brother has had 4 children, but they're all girls and they're going to lose the title to someone else already. He falls in love with her because he values her intelligence. Once again, the ultimate fantasy, right? That this man, this super eligible handsome man, falls in love with a woman not because she's very chill, but because he really finds her fascinating and he cannot talk to any other woman because they're just so boring. It's kind of like she's so special, so he supports her dream to go to university. However, when they get to the university, they don't want her anymore. They actually just wanted her there to be like a translator. They didn't want to enroll her as a student. So he goes in and then he's like, you must let her take the exam. If she passes your exams, you will award her the degree, because that's the whole goal, right? She wants to get a degree from a university, even if they won't let her study there. So she goes in and she passes, like, with flying colors, and she gets a degree. So it turns out she already has the university education that she wanted. Now she just has the confirmation, and then of course they're going to go off and travel to Egypt to study the hieroglyphs and the pyramids together. It's kind of a match made in heaven lah. So that is the last book. It's very different from the other books in that there are no like kidnappings. Because Miss Betsy's business is gone and Miss Betsy was gotten rid of already. There are 2 novellas. They just concern fringe characters. So like someone's sister-in-law and how she ends up with the man that she wants to marry. While she was pressurized into getting married and everything, she finds her true match. So that is that. Moving on. Okay, I'll talk about the Japanese lit first. I read 2. One of it, I had to return the book already. Okay, so the first book I'll talk about here, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. So this book, I kind of saw it like being recommended to me here and there, and I also saw a lot of critique of it. People said that the 4 stories were very disparate and they criticized like everything. They criticized the premise, they criticized the credibility, they criticized the style, they criticized everything. But like, you know, I feel when you read Japanese translated literature, criticizing the style is not helpful, because the style comes from the translator and you can just kind of overlook it. And when you read enough translated literature from Japanese, you just get used to it. Like the way that they convey ideas is not the same way that Caucasian writers do. It's just very different. They give you a feeling, they don't really give you the message. From the feeling, you decipher the message. So that is just my take on Japanese translated literature. Obviously, I'm not like a academic or anything, it's just my opinion. You go with the feeling, and if you are going in with your brain instead of with your heart, you won't understand what's going on. You just won't. You'll be like, oh, this is so confusing, oh, why can't they have a linear plot, etc, etc. You will just be very thrown off. But you just go in and you enjoy the ride. Just enjoy the ride, and the message will come to you later on. So this book, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, the premise is that there is a cafe that is kind of like timeless, because in the cafes, one of the booth seats in the corner, if you sit there, you can go back in time to a place in the past or even in the future, and then you can talk to somebody that has been in the cafe before. So you kind of have to time it properly, and you can only sit there for as long as your coffee is hot, and you have to drink it all up. If you don't drink it all up, you will become a ghost. You'll be stuck there for all eternity, like a spirit type, basically a ghost lah. So there are 4 people who want to go back in time to like address their regret. Then I felt like the most touching one was actually the last one, where somebody knows that she's not going to survive childbirth, so she goes into the future to meet her future daughter, and she manages to reconcile the fact that she's going to die lah. The child like thanks her for giving her life. So I thought that was the most touching. The other 3 stories were not very touching at all. Not because I'm heartless, I cry over like the smallest things, okay, but I think like compared to it, it's just not the same. So the next book, Hiromi Kawakami, 10 Loves of Nishino. This author, Hiromi Kawakami, she has written many other books that I quite enjoyed. So there's like Strange Weather in Tokyo, there is the Nakano Thrift Store. So all these books that she's written, when you read her books, you will know that she writes in a particular style, and you will know that she writes about a particular topic, and I quite enjoy it. Hey, we're gonna go out soon. Okay, yeah, so it's 10 short stories, but they're all tied together by the fact that all these women knew one man, and they had interacted, or they had a relationship with this one man. And I think like, you know, this man is obviously set up to be like a Casanova playboy type, but when you read it, you realize that even though the women do love him and the women do like idealize him to some extent, when you see what he says and you see what he does, he just ends up becoming more and more pathetic. Like, you realize that he does the same thing to every woman. He proposes to half of them, he cheats on most of them, he's just like slimy. But then women just like, you know, find him attractive, but they don't go into the relationship like stupid or anything. They know what they're going into. They willingly, knowingly choose to get into a relationship with a man that they know is not going to commit to them. I think like it's a rather honest portrayal of relationships, and like, you know, there is no like true victim or villain here. In a sense, Nishino is a victim of his own making. He ends up alone, he ends up dying unmarried. His ghost like visits he even though like a lot of women, yeah, he just ends up dying unmarried. Even though he did want to get married someday, he ended up not being able to find the woman to marry. Whereas all the other women, they go on and they have their own lives, and they just remember him as like a fond, somewhat bittersweet memory. But on the whole, I just feel like he's kind of like a slimy kind of character. I don't like him. I think the worst part is that you can't really hate him either, because he's not like a bad person. He's not like super dishonest or anything. He's just, you know, this normal kind of like salary man kind of dude, and he just can't help himself lah, you know. He's just a serial womanizer, and it's not like he's, you know, like a super rich Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey type of character. He's just a normal salary man. He's just a normal salary man. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like this book. Okay, the last one, The Need by Helen Phillips. This, I need to say straight off the bat, is speculative fiction, and I really enjoyed it. I know that there's critique of it online, but I don't care. I like it, okay? So I get that, like, you know, I understand their gripe with it. They complain that the protagonist talks too much about nursing because she's a mother. She's a nursing mother. She has like milk in her breast, so she's always talking about her milk and her breast and the need to breastfeed and the pain that comes from carrying the milk in her breast, and then when the milk comes down, it's very painful. You need to go and, like, you know, express the milk. Okay, I get it, and maybe some people are just not comfortable with it, but I feel like the protagonist constantly talking about it lends a layer of unreliability to her that is very helpful in creating that tension and that sense of dread when you do not know whether or not she is really losing her mind or whether something is really going on. I'll just give you like the spoiler, okay? Spoiler alert, don't say I never say. She's an archaeologist, and then they are kind of like unearthing artifacts in this place called the pit, because it is literally a pit, and then they're just digging it up, finding things, and in it they find so many strange things. They find like Coke bottle, but the label is slightly different, and then they find a bunch of things that seem to be very similar to what we have in our world, but it's just slightly different. So it's like a suggestion of a parallel universe where things are a little bit different. And the most important thing is that they found a Bible. This is like the most important thing. They found a Bible where all the pronouns referring to God, usually it's like he, him, our father, it's all changed to feminine pronouns. So the divine pronoun has become her. Let her word be done. Obviously, this caused a lot of controversy. Even if like this is not the book world, right? Even if this is the real world, you have a Bible printed properly and inside the pronouns are all her. People are going to be like, why is this? Is this a hoax? How can it be? You confirm got people going to like stand up and start rioting and, you know, try to burn down your establishment and everything, right? Because that is the way it is. Here we are told that perhaps there is an alternate universe, and our protagonist is also like, her job is just to dig and find more of these things that have slipped between the two parallel worlds. However, she's also like a mother of 2 children, and she's like obviously not doing so well lah as a mother, because it's very tiring to take care of 2 kids, and her husband is a touring musician, so he's not really around to help her, and motherhood like fraying her at the edges. At the same time, she still wants to do her work, and she still has to give tours to people because they want to come down to see the Bible and everything, and you know, her colleagues need to earn their coin, so they all have to work. It's very hard for her. One day there's an intruder in the house. She finds out the intruder is actually herself from another parallel universe, except she had to suffer the loss of her children, because on the day when she was giving a tour and her children came to visit her, there was a bomber. A bomber came up and she saw the Bible, and then she just detonated it in the hopes of destroying that Bible, and she lost her children when she slid into the pit, which she also called the seam because it's a seam between the 2 worlds. She ended up in our protagonist's world, and then completely consumed by grief, she feels the need to demand and to force protagonist to share her children with her. She completely understands, because she would have done the same thing. She too would have been unable to let go of her children, and she too would have been unable to let go of, like, you know, her husband. So they have this uneasy relationship in which they know that the other hates them, but they also cannot help but feel like this is the closest person that is in their life. They can confide in this person because confirm only this person will understand how they are feeling. If you like shows like Black Mirror or the movie Coraline, Annihilation, or if you like the movie Us, then this book falls under that category. It presents to you this gothic double, the double who is like you but also unlike you, but not so unlike you that you cannot see yourself in them. It's literally her other, you know, it's her other. And in the end, spoiler lah, okay, they merge, and then she feels stronger. She feels like she can do everything. So okay lor, it's not a bad ending. I felt that it was the only plausible ending. I'm glad they didn't kill each other. And that is the end of my September reads. October is coming soon. Honestly, I don't think I'll get to read. I know I said this last month, but exams are coming. so I will be swamped. So yeah, I don't think I'll get to read much. I don't intend to borrow any library books. I will only read the books from my friend. I still have a backlog of books that I borrowed from my friends. I've been holding on to them for a year now. It's time for me to start reading them so I can return them and stop infringing on my friends' good graces. Yeah, I'm sorry friends for holding on to your books for so long. I will get to them like now, okay? Okay. I have to go. I'm going out. So